Breaking news right now. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will start to blockade the Strait of Hormuz effective immediately after peace talks with Iran failed. Trump posted on social media saying in part the meeting went well, most points were agreed to, but the only point that really mattered, nuclear, was not. Iran said it would open the Strait of Hormuz as part of the fragile ceasefire deal, but it's unclear how many ships have gone through. And Iran warns there are mines in the strait, which U.S. Navy vessels were clearing earlier this weekend.